the logical flaw of my previous video. I don't mind saying that my previous video is a little more logical than the things I hear, but the things I hear are such shit. Which I say with respect. I mean, shit gets a bad rap. Shit gets a bad rap because the sacredness of shit goes back to the beginning, and the respect for the sacredness of shit specifically goes back at least, 3,500, 4,000 years with the scarab. In science, the science of the microbiota of the gut is only just birthing the chemistry, the biology. One of the interesting things about the gut, or about the digestive system, specifically the eating system, this body is more or less symmetric. A bilateral symmetry. A bicameral mind. Shout out Julius Janes. I'm not necessarily totally down with that, but it ain't bad. So more or less we have this symmetry in the body. Kidney here, lung here, ear here, eye here, nostril here. Teeth are symmetric, feet are symmetric, hands are symmetric. Now, kinda. We know Lyle Lovett's face ain't totally symmetric. We also know, once upon a time, because I read it in an interview, he was on stage and someone yelled at him, "You cunt! You cunt!" And he said, "Yes, I can." "You cunt, you can't." "Yes, I can." Also, my nostrils are anti-symmetric, or they're asymmetric. But you gotta look close. You don't see it at first. Now my beard's not symmetric. And as I was growing up, my right side always aged faster than my left side. I had pubes on the left side of my balls. Back when I was 7. I didn't get pubes on the left side of my balls till I was 9. Same with my pits, same with my back hair. My grays are more prominent on my right side than they are on my left. My right eye and my left eye. But anyway, it's the digestive system that's askew. Every part of our body kind of seems to be symmetric. But then when it gets to the digestive system, all of a sudden we got that in our liver. So our intestines, they're all not. They're spiraling. They're twirling. And our liver wraps around one side, and our appendix is kind of every which way. And one in so many people Because most people have their liver on one side, but one in so many people have their liver on the other side. It's not an accident. It's part of the order of things. But anyway, all I really wanted to get to in this video was that I'm working this out in dialogue because I know in my mind, like, every soul, everything, every person matters. And I get caught up. I've made so many mistakes in everything that I've said in this channel, you know. And it's kind of like I've been listening to a lot more about Islam lately, you know. I'd heard it said that, Muhammad said that, like, sometimes he was speaking as a prophet and sometimes he was just a regular guy. And, like, the people around him every so often would be like, wait, are you speaking as the prophet or are you speaking as the regular guy? I do have to point out this. If that's true, I'm not sure if it's true. I have to do more research, you know. But that sets a precedent. That, like, sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. It sets a precedent in a few ways. One, it sets a precedent for him, is like, well, then we have to ask ourselves when we're reading either the Quran or the Hadith, like, wait, what are we talking about? Because in that sense, it's kind of like partially inspired by God and partially inspired by the flesh. In contrast, or in comparison, like with Jesus, which was like, there was never an ambiguity. The precedent was set, I am God. There wasn't an there's ambiguity amongst the disciples, amongst the others, right? But there isn't the president. The president sets the president. The precedent. The president with an S or the precedent with a C. An SI or a CE. I'm becoming more and more and more and more respectful of Islam. More and more respectful of Islam. Mostly because I see that Muhammad figure in myself. Sometimes I'm being prophetic, and sometimes I'm just human and wrong. Sometimes I'm caught up in what they call politics. And sometimes I'm caught up in the politics as the movements of peoples. Sometimes I'm less worser. But I've yet to set the precedent where everything that comes out of my mouth is the truth. And there was one who did that. The funny thing is, even though, like Nicholas, I will slap Arian across the face. If he says Jesus was just a man. Now, Muhammad said what Arian said. Nicholas put Arian down. No one yet has put Muhammad down. Why? Yes, he's the last prophet. He's the last prophet within slippery time of the Old Testament. time is slippery. It doesn't just go like time doesn't just go like this. It's this rushing fluid thing. Yes, there's a direction, but there's this rushing fluid dynamic of time where times progress across the surface of the earth. Across the surface of the swirling earth that spirals. It doesn't revolve. I mean, it rotates and it revolves, yes, relatively, but absolutely, it spirals upon spirals upon spirals upon spirals upon spirals upon spirals upon spirals. So within what I call slippery time, which is absolute relativistic. People say, is it absolute time? Is it relativistic time? It's absolute relativistic time. There is a center. What do I mean? So in my last video when I was talking about abortion, so it seems kind of like I'm supporting abortion, but maybe not a little bit. So there is a logical flaw in my previous video. And it's the same way that the Serengeti effect. So stop now. Look up Serengeti effect. Basically what it has to do with is the whole idea of reintroducing animals into the wild, or reintroducing biota into the florosphere, for lack of a better term, the florosphere, the plant kingdom. But it's like I'll boil it down to a video I saw about the Royal Institute. I think it was from the Royal Institute, where like there are too many deer, they're eating the wrong crops, and the right crops we want aren't growing. So we put wolves, we take wolves from here and we put them there to kill the deer so they won't eat so much plants. So it's effective. That's pretty much like abortion. It's temporally effective. Abortion is temporally effective. So in my previous video, I'd said, like, if you make abortion illegal, in certain cases, you're actually condemning people to death. You'll have to watch my previous video. And it's the same thing. But at the same time, I was a little bit arguing for abortion. Abortion is like the wolves of the Serengeti effect. Abortion equalizes the system in the same way that releasing wolves in the wild to eat the deers that are eating the plants that are destroying the deers are destroying the flora, so we release wolves to eat the deer, to equalize the system. That's what abortion does. Abortion equalizes a traumatic system. That's not ideal. It's not perfect, and it's not what we're going to. It's not what the omega point pulls to. It's not teleological causality. which is poo-pooed upon. But if nothing else, the universe has already proved that it's anti-entropic. The universe has already proved that this isn't my words, but I've borrowed them. That all structures in the universe exhibit all structures like us in the universe that we know and can see, in the cosmos that we know and can see. Cosmos and universe don't mean the same thing, but where those two terms meet is truth. Sorry for being like that about it. I'm such an arrogant, prideful jerk, but over time, the universe, generally speaking, the forms in the cosmological universe, or the unicosmos, in the unicosmos, portray, exhibit, progress toward and through increased states of energy, flux, density. More efficient, more energy with less resources. So, abortion is not ideal. It's wrong. At the alpha. We're not at the alpha. The Serengeti effect is true, but how deep does it go? Releasing wolves in the wild isn't the depths of the Serengeti effect. Releasing wolves in the wild to kill the deer, that's abortion. How deep does it go? It goes to the gut. Because people talk about, for instance, the microbiota of the gut. What is it? Margulis? Lynn Margulis? Her statements on bacteria are pretty much earth-shattering. And her statements on bacteria correspond to, in physics, fermions and bosons. So there's some kind of harmonic connection between what Lynn Margulis says about bacteria and about what science says about fermions and bosons. There's a harmonic connection from the Planck to the outer limits. On those terms, check them out. How deep does the Serengeti effect go? Yes, if you release wolves in the wild. But are those deers eating so much and fucking so much and reproducing so much because they're so scared, just like people? When people are more scared, they fuck more. How do I know? I've experienced it in my own life. I'm less scared now, even though my everyday life is more precarious, right? Because I'm older and I know I'm gonna die, right? In my life, the focus of my life has shifted. The focus of my life has shifted from I want to get mine. To, I need to leave truth. So, I'm broken, to my mind, like Muhammad was by his own words. Now, did he say he was the last prophet? I don't know. I haven't got there yet. I barely started studying. That's what people say. Was that what he said? I don't know. I've said a lot of shit and I've been wrong. But the precedent was set that he said that sometimes I'm the prophet and sometimes I'm just a human being. Sometimes this, sometimes that. And that's why when I come back to our boy, our baby boy, the son of our little girl, who said, and to others said, fully human, fully God, always, not sometimes this, sometimes that, always both. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, right? Because I made those prayers. I still make them. God, show me the truth. 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 And over 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 again, God said, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure about that? You want to see what I see? You want to know what I know? Oh. This is what God told me. I'm sorry to be like this about it, but I have to say it. It's not so bad. You want to know? The first few times God was like, oh yeah? And I'd be like, yeah. And he'd be like, okay. And he'd be like, oh yeah. And then I'd be like, yeah. He'd be like, all right. Sorry, I'm using the male pronoun. That's just part of the vernacular. He'd be like, really? I was like, yeah. He was like, really? And I was like, yep. Anyway, what it all came down to was when God opened that window, I saw something that people don't write about. Typically, when they speak about seeing God and like heaven and everything. Now, I'm not negating God has many faces. I'm just speaking to the face God showed me. And God has shown me various sides of various faces. But it's still a very, just like I live on this very narrow, I live in this 100-mile radius of the earth. And I've not even examined most of that. I've examined barely any of this 100-mile radius of this earth that I lived on. And yeah, I've gone a little bit outside here or there, but mostly I live in this 100-mile radius. But anyway, when I prayed God to show to me what it was like to be God, even as I sought power, I guess God must have known that my heart was not necessarily pure, but pure enough that God could give me a glimpse. And all as I could hear was, "Help me." Millions, thousands of help me's. I mean, it brought me crashing down for about 3 days, and it was tough. Time was tough for me in those few days, because like 1,000 years just flooded over me, my mind, my heart, puking and shitting and pissing all over the place in my bathroom, all over my fucking living room, crying on the floor, doing this like weird movement dance, seeing visions, you know. That's life, man. It's life. And it's not real. And there was one point where it was almost like I had to move my body around my apartment because like I was in such pain. And I feel like, you know, God works in mysterious ways, and this is certainly a mysterious way. And I felt very much like I personally was responsible for answering someone's prayer. Prayers go back and forward through time. The deeper the prayer, the more it expands through time, backwards and forwards. What makes Jesus God? Part of what makes Jesus God is that we pray for and to Jesus. The suffering on the cross. God, why have you forsaken me? It's not only a prayer to God, it's a prayer to us in God's image. Our prayers backward through time, here in the future. Our prayers backward through time to Jesus and Mary and the other saints and the Old Testament folk and even the pagans. Like, the things that have stuck today are intimately, literally, intimately related. Married, Mary. People don't talk about that much when you get married. When you get married. Mary. Marriage. M-A-R-R-I-A-G-E. Marriage. M-A-R-R-Y-A-G-E. Marry. Age. We are in the Marian age. Make no mistake. The mother. I'll have more to say about that. Oh, yes. And that's what I was trying to get to with my previous video, is that we still do not respect mothers. Mary is the king, so to speak. Well, what do I mean by king? Well, in the same way, now this is one of the interesting things about the Quran that perhaps we can borrow, and perhaps this was one of those prophetic things that Muhammad did. Muhammad, blessed be, as the last prophet of the Old Testament. How do you know he's the last prophet of the Old Testament? I'm sorry. I know this is going to piss people off, but hear me out. Because of halal and kosher, Old Testament, still valid today under the authority of God. I'm not harshing on it. It's still valid under the authority of God today. I'm not harshing on it because of slippery time. Jesus crawled into the Old Testament. This is a little bit more mythological. Mythos and logos. The best story wins in the same way that the best logos wins. The best logos alive in this world today, for instance, this is a perfect example of slippery time. Norman J. Wildberger, the University of South Wales, Australia, an American, moved to Australia, has killed the concept of real numbers. If you're not into math and you're like, he just said he killed real numbers. Well, numbers are real. What do you mean? But for anybody who's a little bit into math, like real numbers mean something, but like the word, it's a misnomer. Real numbers and imaginary numbers, like they're misnomers. I think it was Goss who said they should be called lateral numbers. Which is a better, imaginary numbers, lateral numbers, complex numbers, right? We still have a lot of language to work out about this. In the same way that, like, it's really good that these days people are talking about reformulating pronouns. It's just they have the people today who have taken hold. The people today who are talking about pronouns being wrong. They have framed the problem correctly. Their solution is incorrect. Shakespeare, John Dee, etc., backwards through time have already actually created the solution that we've yet to come to. I've talked about it before. You'll have to look at my previous things. Same way, like previously, I've talked about like how Dugin from Russia, Alexander Dugin, who unfortunately, like him or hate him, unfortunately his daughter was just murdered in an supposedly an assassination attempt on him. So he's written like 60 books. I do not agree with his. I do not agree with what his solution is, so far as I can tell. But he has framed. He's framed the context correctly. So we need to deal with it. Similarly, like Muhammad framed the situation correctly. He came to an incorrect conclusion. But I'm saying, it's the same thing I'm saying about myself. Like, I don't have the conclusion. But I'm working within the proper framework. That much I know. So far, I hope to get there. The same thing with abortion, the same thing with the Serengeti effect. Because if we think bigger, more harmonized, more interstitial patterns, more three-dimensional patterns, so-called, I hate calling them this, but Platonic forms. And this is one of those things. Same thing with Plato. Plato created the framework. He was incorrect. Plato's Republic, for instance, it is, what do they call it? So like if you believe in Plato and you believe in David, now a lot of people don't believe in either one. Some people believe in either Plato or King David. You cannot believe in Plato and King David at the same time. It's incommensurate. It's imperfectly incommensurate. That's the thing. Incommensurability seems like, it doesn't fit, it doesn't work, it doesn't whatever. No. There is one perfect incommensurability. That is existence. Godly existence is perfect incommensurability. Imperfect incommensurability is chaos. Right? That's why God came around. To structure chaos. Perfect incommensurability is the omega point. When free will is still free and godly. The alpha, this is why God's God. The alpha is imperfect incommensurability. The sole perfection of God alone and the complete absolute imperfect incommensurability of everything else. At the omega point. Now, free will existed there. Free will exists at the omega point in perfect incommensurability. The incommensurability is the free will. The perfection of it is that it becomes a dance, a perfect. Imagine life, right? Now, this is just a riff, but imagine life where all of it is like an operatic jazz dance. Like, what if we didn't talk to each other? What if we sang to each other? What if we didn't walk to work? What if we danced to work? Right? I don't mean it like Mary Poppins. It's a little bit more like Avatar without having to kill the deer. What if every plant was food for every vertebrate? We already breathe this, and the trees breathe this. And there's no reason why digestion cannot be modeled after respiration. That's our job. God already took care of the breathing part. It's our job to take care of the eating and shitting part. Shit is sacred. Make no bones about it. But in time, pragmatically, God has to make decisions. We have those choices of the railroad tracks, you know. You save this, you save the old lady, or you save the two kids, you know. You got two people stuck on the train tracks. And it's like, do you save this one or that one? Which lever do you pull? Right. Here's the thing. We have levers at the train tracks. God has a lever at every train track. There's a double lever at every train track. I hold one, you 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 hold one, they hold one, she holds one, he holds one. We're all always pulling these levers of life and death. No fucking doubt, man. And God is responsible for all of them and can switch any of them at any time. Imagine that. We stumble over these little silly philosophical questions of like, who do you save? Who do you save? At the train tracks, right? Well, that's where the Serengeti effect and the concept of like abortion, yes or no, comes in. Is like, when we're looking at the Serengeti effect and we're releasing wolves into the wild. Now, to my mind, that is incorrect. That's the wrong thing to do. In the same way that abortion is the wrong thing to do. However, in certain circumstances, at certain times, amongst us flawed judges, it works a little bit. But we're not seeing a big enough picture. We're not stepping back far enough. So I guess what I'm saying, like, for instance, I basically at this point in my life have two main objectives: the vegan cross and moms. Period. Our hatred of women, here's one of the ways that you know we hate women. We love girls. We love virgins. We love virgins. We hate women. How do you know? In some parts of the world, they're all covered up. Now, I know it can also mean like when you're all covered up, it's like modesty, and I respect that. Another thing about like being all covered up is like you're just focusing on the eyes, and the eyes are the windows to the soul, and that's beautiful. Then all of a sudden, we're not looking about how big your head is and like, you know, your form, and like if your boobs are perfect and purred or if they're like sagging down. You know, it's like all of a sudden it's all about the eyes, the light in the eyes. That's very beautiful, and it's equalizing in that way, because all of a sudden we're not looking at the form of the body, we're looking into the soul. Like that's an incredibly beautiful notion. You know? But also at the same time, then we don't know how old or young you are, right? Okay. Same thing with. It's a similar and opposite thing, like in the United States, you know, where it's like, dude, if you saw like a 25-year-old woman walking down the street, hairy as me, if you saw a girl with boobs, with this much hair on them, you'd throw up, literally. As it, you know, like if you saw, like if you saw someone stabbing someone, you'd throw up. If you saw a woman with boobs as hairy as my chest is, you'd be barfing all over the place. If you saw a woman with legs as hairy as mine, right, you'd throw up. You'd be like, whoa, you'd tell your friends, you'd take a picture, you'd make a joke about it. A movie about it. You post a YouTube thing. If you saw, you know, this thing everybody loves hates Amber Heard these days. If you saw Amber Heard with a big old fat fucking mustache, right? You'd post it in a million times. Ah! People hate women as they are. Right. What's popular these days? How do I know? Well, you know, porno videos with like cougars, MILFs, GILFs. The Madonna video that was posted the other day. I love old Madonna shit, you know, whatever. And yeah, Madonna, yeah, she's a babe, you know. But how much wax has gone in? How much laser electrolysis has gone into making her look the way she looks? You know what I'm saying? We're still stripping women of their hair. No one ever really talks about it. They'll talk about it a little bit, but like, and now it's the same thing with men. Like, you're not allowed to have back hair if you're a man. You're not allowed to have shoulder hair if you're a man, right? Super embarrassing. We have to get over all of that. But it's especially hard on women, man. It's especially hard on women. And I'm only saying it because I recognize it within myself. Like, I'm already, you know, I'm already toast. It's just I got to tell the truth about it. You know. Imagine a 13-year-old boy. Imagine 1,000 years from now when a 13-year-old boy looks at a 30-year-old woman with a mustache, maybe even a beard. They're out there. A lot more than we think. It's the biggest taboo thing in the world. We talk about pedophilia on the television 24/7. We talk about all this crazy whacked out. We talk about nuclear bombs and nuclear destruction. We show wars. We show all this shit. What don't we show on TV? I mean, it's absolutely fucking crazy. It's fucking, like, literally crazy. There are, it just for all the information that we have in the world, there are millions, maybe billions of women who are in their 30s. I remember I had a girlfriend when I was a junior in high school who would wax her upper lip because she had a big old fat fucking mustache, man. I've met so many women with mustaches just here or there. Young. Like, women have beards. I remember in 5th grade, there was this girl. I remember we were playing kickball, and the way the light from the sun hit her legs, she had hair on her legs longer than mine. And we just wipe it from our minds, wipe it from society. Why? Because we still want that virgin. We don't care. I'm just being poetic with the vernacular of the day right now. Now, okay, so I just excused myself for being poetic with the vernacular of the day. So it's like I have a free pass. So it's like I'm excusing myself. I'm forgiven, right? No. Well, don't think that because I'm making that free pass that my mind isn't still infected with it. I may not live long enough to outlive this infection, even as I look at it. Just because you know you're hypnotized doesn't mean that you've broken free of the hypnosis. Let me give you an example. This happened to me. I won't tell you how it happened to me, but I was hypnotized. It just happened to me. I won't tell you how. This is a big warning. Leave now. Oh, should I? I'm gonna think on it, because it's such a silly little hypnosis, but like, I'll hypnotize you in like 5 seconds, and it might ruin your life. And it's so simple and silly, but it will shake you to your foundation. I'll leave it for another time, but it has to do with a pen click. I'll leave it for another time. Yeah, another time. We need to look deeper and stand back. There are other solutions. There's always other solutions to a problem. And when you solve one, you create another. For instance, releasing wolves in the wild is always, every time, a bad idea. Wolves are our enemy. Now, dogs who came from wolves, now that's a different story. But like, releasing the wolves. Now, sheepdogs are mean, right? Sheepdogs came from wolves. But sheepdogs are better than wolves. That's how God works. To get better. 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 Now, what if instead of releasing wolves, we released sheepdogs? For the amount of people, for the man hours involved in capturing the wolf, releasing the wolf, for the legislation, the lawyers, like the literal man hours involved in doing that whole thing with the wolves. Well, what if we had sheepdogs? And what if we could train those sheepdogs to separate the males from the females? In the same way old churches separated the men from the women. What if we exacted this puritanical kirka, this split kirka amongst the deer? What if we could train the sheepdog? I'm just saying, isn't it better? I mean, we're already involved. Oh, but then we're just, eugenically da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. In some sense, eugenics gets a bad rap because we think that it's only like that the Nazi eugenics is the only way to like make better people. Right? Well, dogs are eugenics. Why do you think dogs are so fucking happy? For the most part. Why do you think dogs are so fucking happy? Seriously, why do you think dogs love people so fucking much? for the most part. The good ones, right? The ones that we treat nicely.